I was halfway through presenting the new client integration pipeline I'd rebuilt from chaos into a $6.2 million quarterly machine when the door slammed open hard enough to rattle the glass. In she came. Samantha Lang, 6-inch stilettos, crimson lipstick, clutching an HR clipboard like a royal decree. She moved like gravity itself made room for her. "Per HR," she said, voice sharp enough to slice air. "Your role has been dissolved. Effective immediately, you're fired." For a second, nobody breathed. The investor delegation, 6 suits from Evercrest Capital, the fund that had just wired $50 million into Northbridge Systems, froze mid-note. One of them stopped writing. Another blinked like he'd just watched a car crash in slow motion. Even the assistant with the iced coffee looked up as if asking silently, "Did she actually just do that?" I didn't flinch. I smiled. "Weird," I said, letting my voice carry to the back of the walnut-paneled boardroom. "My mother's at home." Confusion rippled. A pause stretched long enough to make every ego in the room uncomfortable. Then the double doors opened again, quietly this time, and Thomas Caro, the CEO, the man who built Northbridge from a garage startup into a national logistics empire, walked in. Silver hair, $1,000 suit, presence like a pressure system. Samantha was still mid-smirk when he crossed the room and placed a calm hand on my shoulder. "Apologies," he said to the stunned investors. "Family matter." Samantha's face cracked, color draining like cheap paint in the rain. Her boyfriend, Ethan, our VP of operations, suddenly discovered something fascinating about the carpet pattern. The investors, silent until that moment, began recalibrating their mental spreadsheets of who actually mattered in this company. Thomas scanned the clipboard Samantha held, frowned, then passed it to his assistant with 2 words. "Shred this." He turned to me, expression softening into something that wasn't quite CEO, more father. "Take 5, Natalie," he said. "We'll finish the demo." They were just starting to be impressed. That hand on my shoulder wasn't just paternal. It was surgical, a scalpel cutting clean through years of being talked over, side-eyed, and politely erased by people who thought the quiet project lead in flats didn't know how to swing a hammer. The room shifted. Even the air felt rewritten. Samantha's lipstick-painted mouth twitched, but she didn't speak. Thomas didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Step outside," he said. And when she hesitated, his tone chilled a fraction. "Now." No guards, no shouting, just authority that didn't require volume. She turned, heels clicking a shaky rhythm, and walked out. The door closed behind her like a sentence ending. I didn't gloat. I didn't even move. Thomas's voice was still calm when he spoke to the room. "Apologies again. Family matter?" The investors nodded. Polite, impressed, curious. They weren't just witnessing a power correction. They were witnessing a hierarchy rewritten live. When I finally left the room, my hands were steady, but my pulse was wildfire. The hallway outside was quiet, corporate quiet, where gossip travels faster than Wi-Fi. I walked to the alcove near the west stairwell, my old hiding spot for moments when screaming wasn't an option. My phone buzzed. 3 Slack messages from Ethan, 2 unread emails from legal, and 1 call from the only person whose opinion still mattered, Thomas. "Come to my office. Use the private elevator." I exhaled slowly. This wasn't how I'd planned it. I'd taken the job under my mother's maiden name 6 years ago. No fanfare, no LinkedIn post, no Nepo baby whispers. I'd built the onboarding and operations vertical from spreadsheets and caffeine into the company's most profitable arm. Nobody knew I was the CEO's daughter, not even Samantha, who'd strutted into legal 3 years ago like a martini given a job title. She'd fast-tracked through compliance, latched onto Ethan like ambition with acrylic nails, and once told someone at happy hour she'd marry into this company. That was the day I started keeping receipts, screenshots, expense reports, approval trails. Not because I wanted revenge, because I'd seen what happened when people like her got too close to the top. Now, she'd just fired the wrong person in front of $50 million worth of investors. And whether she realized it or not, the countdown had already begun. The private elevator to the executive floor smelled like cedar and old money. It skipped the middle floors everyone else had to grind through and opened directly into the top suite. Marble, glass, silence. I'd only been there twice before, once by accident during orientation, and once when Thomas had heart surgery and needed me to sign documents quietly under my mother's name. No one up here hustled. They floated. When the doors parted, Thomas was waiting, hands clasped behind his back beside a polished conference table. On it sat a single folder stamped, Confidential, Crown Haven Internal. He looked at me like a surgeon evaluating a patient who already knew the diagnosis. "Is this what I think it is?" he asked. I nodded once. "Then it's time," he said. I'd started gathering the Crown Haven file 6 months ago. Not as revenge, as insurance. Samantha and Ethan had been sloppy, blurring lines between personal gain and company resources like it was a hobby. Their vendor dinners at wine bars owned by relatives. Their late-night strategy off-sites that ended up in hotel expense reports. It all piled up quietly, layer by layer, until it could bury them. I kept everything off the grid. Locked USB, encrypted emails, paper copies hidden behind a false panel in my desk drawer. I didn't intend to use it unless someone forced my hand. And this morning, Samantha had done exactly that. Thomas flipped open the folder and skimmed the top page. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did. "You've done the work," he said. "Now let's show them what legacy looks like." When I returned to the bullpen, the room buzzed with forced normalcy. People typing, whispering, pretending not to look at me. I walked past my old project board, half-erased notes, color-coded deadlines, and sat down like it was any other Tuesday. No one spoke. Even the intern who used to ask me about PowerPoint templates avoided eye contact. My inbox was a battlefield of unread messages, most from HR or ops, all variations of clarification pending. I ignored them. Then a ping. Slack. Ethan S., VP Ops. "You set us up. You planned this." I read it once, calm, then screenshot it. New email to legal. Subject line: Potential retaliation. Crown Haven file reference number 14. I attached the image, CC'd compliance, hit send, and deleted the Slack thread. Let him yell into the void. Minutes later, my desk phone rang. Unknown extension. I answered. Natalie speaking. A smooth voice replied. "This is Olivia Chan, associate partner at Evercrest Capital. We met in the conference room earlier." I straightened instinctively. "Of course," I said. "What can I do for you?" "I was wondering if we could have a brief private chat," she said. Her tone wasn't hostile, just sharp, like she already knew the answer. "Conference room Ops G3 and 5? I offered. She agreed. I arrived early. Printed a single sanitized summary page from my private USB. Enough data to prove I wasn't bluffing, not enough to set off alarms. Olivia entered moments later, professional, focused. She sat down, folded her hands, and said, "We're not stupid. That was a hit job back there. But you didn't flinch. Either you're reckless or you're sitting on something." I slid the page across the table. She read in silence for almost a minute. When she looked up, her expression had shifted from curiosity to calculation. "How long have you been compiling this?" 6 months, I said. I never planned to use it unless someone forced my hand. She nodded, tapping the edge of the paper. "Why not escalate sooner?" "Because the system protects people like Samantha," I said. "She weaponizes HR policy. You report her, and she files you under tone issue. Ethan signs off her doctored budgets because he thinks charm is a currency. Legal can't touch her. She was legal. Olivia leaned back. This is enough to raise serious concern. Will you formalize it? Yes, but I want it to go directly to your diligence and board compliance team, not through HR. Her lips curved, almost a smile. Good, because we weren't calling to warn you. We were calling to invite you. We've suspected rot inside Northbridge for months, but we couldn't see the roots. Until now. I exhaled. You're probing. She stood, sliding the page into her folio. No, she said. We're inviting you to show us what's under the waterline. As she reached the door, she turned. Why now? I looked at the frosted glass, behind which the office hummed like nothing had happened. Because she tried to erase me, I said quietly. And because I'm done watching bad people burn down what better people built. The next morning, the company woke up to chaos disguised as calm. At 9:17 a.m., an email from Ethan's office landed across every major department. Subject line: Correction to improper project sign-offs. Q2, Q3, onboarding spend. The body was a swamp of corporate jargon, phrases like unauthorized delegation, administrative oversight, and temporary revocation of budget authority. But the translation was simple. They were trying to erase my signature, rewrite the past 6 months of work, and bury the trail before the investors started digging. Unfortunately for them, the digging had already begun. At 9:46 a.m., I got a call from Dana Rivers, head controller, gravel voice, coffee breath, and the kind of woman who treated accounting like battlefield triage. They think they can ghost an entire quarter's worth of spend? She asked, half laughing. They're idiots. They're desperate, I said. Same thing? She replied. Too bad they forgot you sign off through the legacy chain. Your approvals are tattooed into our system. Even if someone wanted to erase them, they'd have to burn the servers. I leaned back, staring at the gray cubicle wall that suddenly felt like armor. So you're honoring it? Oh, sweetheart, Dana said. We already filed a statement with audit saying we won't reverse a single dollar without board-level authorization. And we CC'd legal, twice. She hung up before I could thank her. I exhaled slowly. The first cracks had appeared. I unlocked my drawer, lifted the false panel, and took out the folder Thomas had seen. The Crown Haven file. 64 pages of time-stamped evidence, Slack exports, expense reports, vendor logs, and photos of receipts from those business dinners Samantha expensed at her sister's wine bar. I opened a new email. No threats, no emotion, just documentation. 2. Audit Committee at Northbridge Group. Subject, Crown Haven file, internal review, submission. Body, per ongoing oversight of operational integrity and reporting accuracy, please find attached documentation relevant to recent claims regarding onboarding budget authority and vendor relationship management, provided in the interest of transparency and corrective action. Regards, Natalie Caro, Senior Ops Lead, Integration Strategy. I read it once, attached the file, hit send. 5 minutes later, Samantha's name vanished from the shared calendar for the investor lunch. By 10:02, the communications assistant whispered that she'd been asked to stand down from all external representation until clarity is achieved. A polite phrase that meant, "You're radioactive." I didn't celebrate. I'd worked here long enough to know that when power starts slipping, people don't fall. They claw. And Samantha had nails for that. The audit meeting hit Monday morning like a thunderclap. No one announced it. The calendar invite just appeared, marked mandatory attendance, operational integrity review. The boardroom smelled of espresso and anxiety. Chairs filled fast. Directors, legal counsel, senior finance officers. Thomas sat at the head, silent, watching. Dana began the presentation. No PowerPoint fluff, just the folder projected line by line like evidence in a trial. Page 14, she said. Dinner at Vellum and Oak. $1,248 billed as vendor development. Attendees: Samantha Lang, Ethan Shaw, and Emily Lang. Samantha's cousin, who the following day filed an invoice for consulting services under a fake vendor ID. A few board members shifted in their seats. Page 29, Dana continued. Headcount adjustment mid-quarter. Junior analyst removed without approval, replaced by unverified contractor. Slack message shows Samantha instructing staff to route it through Ethan. We'll fix it later. Someone muttered, Jesus. Dana didn't pause. Page 37. Vendor payments routed through 3 shell names, all linked to an address under Ethan's cousin's mortgage. She closed the folder softly. And page 64. HR note, verbal aggression, request to backdate approval to avoid triggering compliance review thresholds. Silence. Legal leaned forward. We verified all files twice, said Jared from internal counsel. No tampering. All timestamps match server logs. This data's clean. Thomas finally spoke. Financial exposure? Dana's tone was grave. If investors consider this material misrepresentation, we're looking at breach of diligence covenants. Best case, reputation loss. Worst case. She paused. Federal audit. The room stayed silent. You could feel the weight of it pressing down like humidity. Someone finally asked, Who submitted the file? A glance toward me. Natalie Caro, Dana said. A director frowned. Isn't she? Thomas cut him off. Yes, he said evenly. My daughter. And the only reason this company didn't implode sooner is because she was too good at keeping it running while others siphoned off the top. The board chair nodded slowly. Then let's fix it before the next quarter fixes us. By the time the meeting adjourned, the storm had shifted direction. Samantha's system access was revoked before she even left the boardroom. Ethan's name disappeared from the leadership Slack channel within the hour. I didn't go back to my desk. I went straight to the printer, made 6 hard copies of the Crown Haven file, and locked them in separate drawers across departments: audit, legal, finance, and my own safe. I wasn't taking chances. This wasn't over. The investor dinner that evening wasn't a celebration. It was reconnaissance. The steakhouse glowed with low amber light and soft conversations about money and power. Thomas and I walked in together. No announcement, no theatrics. But eyes followed us anyway. We sat across from Clay Foster, senior partner at Evercrest Capital, a man whose reputation was so cold and sharp it could cut glass. He didn't smile when we arrived, didn't even look at the menus. You're Natalie, he said flatly. Not a question. I nodded. Yes, sir. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. You're sitting here. His tone wasn't unkind. It was command. I sat. The servers floated around like ghosts, pouring wine we wouldn't drink. Clay didn't touch his glass. He leaned back slightly, eyes still locked on me. You let her fire you. It wasn't an accusation, more like curiosity. I didn't answer right away. Thomas shifted beside me, uneasy, but Clay raised a hand. No, I want to understand. You stood there, calm, silent, while she executed a firing in front of my team. Why? I took a slow breath. Because I wanted you to see how leadership behaves when they think no one's watching. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. You didn't panic. You didn't argue. You just let her expose herself. That takes restraint most executives don't have. I met his gaze. Would panic have made me more trustworthy? That earned the faintest hint of a grin. No, he said quietly, but it told me everything I needed to know. He sipped his water and glanced at Thomas. You raised her well. She raised herself, Thomas replied. Clay leaned forward, elbows on the table. We've had suspicions about Ethan and Samantha for months. The numbers didn't line up, but we couldn't prove it. You just handed us proof. And judgment. He swirled his untouched wine. You know what matters more than intelligence in our world, Miss Caro? Timing. And you've got that. I stayed silent. Clay continued. We didn't pause diligence because of fear. We paused because, for once, we found something worth investing in that wasn't on the term sheet. Thomas frowned. Careful, Clay, he said. You're starting to sound sentimental. Clay's eyes flicked back to me. I don't do sentiment, he said. I do potential. Then he raised his glass, not toward Thomas, but toward me. To Natalie, he said, the only person in this company who understands the difference between silence and strategy. I didn't toast back. I didn't need to. I'd already rewritten the entire conversation by existing at that table. The dinner ended quietly. No speeches, no handshakes beyond the necessary. But when we walked out, I could feel it. The recalibration. Evercrest wasn't pulling out. They were leaning in. And Samantha? She was officially off the map. The emergency leadership meeting the next morning was called without warning. Calendars cleared, halls emptied, doors slammed. Every director, VP, and senior counsel gathered on the 10th floor, the same room where Samantha had once strutted with her clipboard. Now, her heels clicked slower as she entered, trying to look composed but vibrating with panic. She came armed with binders and excuses. Ethan followed, pale and sweating. Thomas entered last. He didn't sit. He placed a black leather folder on the table and said, Let's settle this. Samantha spoke first, her voice brittle but defiant. This entire situation has been twisted. Natalie's file is full of misinterpreted data. She's weaponized documents out of context to create a witch hunt. She flipped open her binder full of color graphs and cherry-picked emails. Look at the timing. She drops this file right when diligence tightens. This is retaliation, plain and simple. Ethan nodded too fast. Exactly. Some of those approvals aren't even real. I don't remember signing half that. Thomas didn't react. He lifted one finger, the same gesture that could stop a boardroom mid-sentence. It? The director of infrastructure stood, holding a tablet. We verified every file. All originated from Ms. Caro's company laptop. Metadata matches. No signs of manipulation. Several were automatically backed up to the compliance archive. He turned the screen toward legal. If this data is forged, then so is our entire internal system. Silence. Legal spoke next. We cross-checked Samantha's own approval logs. She signed as both internal counsel and project approver multiple times. That's a governance breach. Samantha's mouth opened, but Thomas cut across her softly. Enough. The word landed like a gavel. We clean house now, he said, or we lose Evercrest. That's the choice. No one argued. The silence in the room was surgical, slicing through whatever illusions of control Samantha still had. She stood, voice trembling under the weight of her own performance. You can't fire me over this circus, she snapped, her tone pitching high, desperate. I've done nothing wrong. This is personal. Thomas didn't raise his voice, didn't even blink. You staged a termination in front of a strategic investor, he said evenly. You buried compliance violations under fabricated audits. and you jeopardized 6/4 of diligence with your ego. He nodded once toward the two quiet men in black polos standing by the door. Escort Ms. Lang to HR. Termination for cause. Samantha froze. The blood drained from her face as the reality settled. For a brief second, I thought she might cry or lash out, but she didn't. Her expression hollowed, the fire gone. She gathered her papers, each motion robotic, and walked toward the door. The security officers followed, silent. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway like punctuation to a very long sentence. Ethan tried to stand, panic bleeding through his charm. "Wait, what about me?" he blurted. "This wasn't all me, Thomas didn't even look at him. "You're suspended," he said, turning to legal. "Immediate. System access revoked. Draft the paperwork." Ethan's voice cracked. "You can't." But the IT director was already typing. His account disappeared from the internal dashboard in real time, his name fading from the leadership channel like it had never existed. Thomas finally sat down, steepled his fingers, and looked at me. "The file wasn't just about them," he said. "It's about how we ignored the rot while it spread. That ends today." Around the table, the directors nodded, silent agreement replacing fear. For the first time in months, the air felt clear. Samantha's exit wasn't cinematic. There were no shouting matches, no tears, just the long, humiliating walk down the marble corridor toward HR. Her heels clicked slower with each step, as if she thought dragging it out might somehow rewrite the ending. When she reached reception, she tried to badge out. The scanner blinked red, then displayed a message that must have felt like a slap. "Access revoked. Termination for cause." The intern at the desk froze, unsure what to do. Security took her badge gently, said nothing. Samantha sat down on the lobby couch, staring blankly through the glass as the building moved on without her. No one came to help. No one even looked her way. And just beyond that glass, I walked past, steady, deliberate, not smug, not vengeful, just finished. Ethan's removal was quieter. 2 IT techs and 1 compliance officer met him at his desk after lunch. No theatrics. His office door was locked by the time he returned from the cafeteria. His laptop already logged out, his access wiped. He tried his badge. Nothing. No beep, no denial tone. Just absence. Like he'd never been part of Northbridge at all. 30 minutes later, the external investigator arrived. Neutral suit, unreadable face. The corporate version of a mortician. He extended a hand to me. "We'll take it from here," he said. I handed him the last file I'd been holding back. A list of shadow vendors, duplicate payments, and untraceable invoices tied to Ethan's department. "There's still more beneath the surface," I said. He nodded. "There always is." By late afternoon, HR was drafting statements, legal was coordinating disclosures, and investor relations was on standby. Thomas called me into his office, closed the door, and leaned against the window overlooking the skyline. The sun was setting, orange reflections dancing across the towers. He handed me a document, my new badge authorization. "Vice President, Operational Integrity." My throat tightened. "You didn't have to. You earned it," he said simply. "The board voted unanimously. You'll oversee all strategic compliance moving forward." I looked at the badge, the title gleaming beneath my name. For years, I'd built systems to protect people who never noticed. I'd stayed quiet, competent, invisible. Not anymore. "Thank you," I said. He smiled faintly. "You ready for your board seat next quarter?" I met his eyes. "Let's start with dinner," I said. "The investors want to talk roadmap." He laughed softly. "Just don't fire anyone this time. We clinked our water glasses. No champagne, no speeches, just quiet acknowledgement that the company had survived its own arrogance. Outside, the city lights flickered alive. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel like I was standing in someone else's shadow. I wasn't just part of the company's legacy anymore. I was rewriting it.